Hello, Dan. Thank you for joining us on the Thursday edition of Journalist Hangout. I am Kemi Fola DMO. Today on the program, at last, ASU suspends 9-month-old strike. This after meeting with the federal government. Also, FCTA task force begins enforcement of COVID-19 protocols over the second wave of pandemic. And President Buhari says only God can effectively supervise Nigeria's border with Niger Republic. And later on the show today, President says repentant bandit helps to secure release of kidnapped Kankara schoolboys. I'll be hanging out with Emeka Madunagu and Olabisi Deji Folutule. Welcome, gentlemen of the press. Yeah. It's good to have you, and congratulations on the successful defense of your PhD thesis.
Thank you.
How was it all?
Beautiful and interesting. You know, to go to a public university. I got admitted in 2016 and I finished in 2020. That is just within 4 years, and it's amazing to get that done in a public university. So I want to say kudos to Lagos State University for getting that done.
Congratulations again. All right, so the conversation begins fully, and if you're ready, Journalist Hangout starts now. Whatever has a beginning must have an end, and so it has been for the 9-month-old strike by university lecturers in Nigeria. After months of meetings, consultations, and mudslinging, the Academic Staff Union of Universities has now, quote, conditionally suspended the strike it embarked upon in March this year over backlog of unmet agreements with the federal government. So the question we ask now is whether we can say uhuru to this lingering impasse between both sides. What do you make of this, development that we have now reached in this engagement?
Yeah, we need to first of all say, well, give a sigh of relief that ASU has agreed to go back to class, after 9 months. So that is good news on its own. But beyond the fact that, beyond the fact that you say they are going back to class, it's with a caveat. And my concern is those conditions that are attached to going back or resuming the strike after 3 months. Now, this is the way I look at it. If it takes the federal government 9 months, 9 good months, to reach agreement with the union on 9 issues, that means approximately spending 1 month on 1 issue. Now, we are talking about agreements now. Nothing has been done. The federal government has only reached an agreement, or ASU has only reached an agreement, or both parties have only reached an agreement that has not been effected. Basically, what we have seen now is that the federal government has only started paying the backlog of salaries of lecturers that were withheld in the course of this strike, which means the 65 billion naira promised has not been paid.
Well, they say they've started paying.
They said they will start paying in January. The federal government gave actually attached dates to a timeline, which ASU is saying that if the federal government should fail in meeting its own agreements, then they will go back without any warning. So the issue now is, how are we sure that the federal government is going to meet the deadline of this agreement this time around? That is the real issue. Because ASU is saying that they are giving the federal government a benefit of the doubt. So and it's so amazing that for 9 good months, Nigerian students were at home doing nothing, and all that ASU could go on with is still like a verbal,
more of promissory,
a promissory note. So really, you ask yourself, where are we going from here? How far are we sure that we won't come back to this again and again? And that is the real issue, which the federal government, and the federal government is actually the only one that can get us out of this.
All right. So that said, Emeka, what will be for you 9 months now? Some have even said it's the longest in the history of strike embarked upon by ASU. I can relate with 6 months, but now having to do with 9 months, of course, with the COVID-19 issue and all. But for you, what have been the gains of this strike that has now been cautiously suspended?
I think the gain is that the government has just gained enough time to renege on yet another agreement, because the government has not shown real sincerity on this matter. You heard the things, you know, the kind of statements that came from operatives of the government, the Minister of Education, at a point the Minister of Labour. You know, it was basically maybe the Minister of State for Labour, Professor Skemo, who was a bit guarded in his statements. But I think the Minister of Education, the Minister of Labour and Employment, you know, did not take into cognizance the sensitivity of the situation, certain statements they made, which was very, very unfortunate. But again, I need to commend the Minister of Labour, Dr. Chris Ngige. At least, once again, he's been able to sort out a protracted situation. But we need to get proper legislation on agreements between government and labor unions and different sectors of the society, because we can't just be having agreements that cannot be implemented. I mean, you can't say, okay, an agreement was reached in 2009, and then down the line, you know, you said you couldn't implement it. ASU went on strike for 9 months. Suddenly, you found yourself being able to implement it. I mean, there should be coordination. There should be a way to negotiate with labor unions in order to prevent systemic breakdown. Because the students, the undergraduates, postgraduate students, and other stakeholders in the tertiary education sector who have been at home for 9 months, that is really injustice. And the unfortunate thing is that in Nigeria, nobody gets punished for such things. Nobody gets booted out of office for failing to let the system, to make the system run. And this thing is also part of inefficiency. Because before this government came into power, the president received a briefing, you know, received a briefing, a voluminous briefing, and a lot of things were in that briefing, you know, by Ahmed Jordan, Dr. Ahmed Jordan. A lot of things were there. So the people who were, you know, hanging around the president, who were shepherding him everywhere, what did they make of the agreement? Nothing. And so in 1 year, we've had COVID-19 overwhelming us. In the same year, we had the NSAS protests, you know, arising from inaction over an issue that should have been dealt with easily. In the same year, ASU shut down the university system. And don't forget, SANU is now talking of going on strike. Then there is the issue of the IPPIS, for which members of staff in polytechnics and colleges of education are talking of going on strike because they say they have misgivings about the IPPIS. So why do we just like going round in circles and circles? Whose interest? Because, you know, reservations have been expressed about the IPPS. Whose interest is this scheme, is this system serving, that it has to be imposed on workers in the tertiary system? If it is not working, why can't it be tweaked or modified or outrightly done away with? And let's have a system that will serve the people. I mean, workers have been talking about being shortchanged. They've been talking about so many things.
Indeed. Well, so much to, you know, ponder on this topic. But you also mentioned, you know, something critical, and which seems to be the crux or one of the elements of this lingering strike. Talking about the IPs debate now, the striking lecturers, you know, proffered their own modification with UTAS that is now. But even as it is now, UTAS hasn't even been implemented. The federal government is said to be using its own, an older way of, you know, capturing these lecturers now, not IPs though, but UTAS hasn't, you know, really taken effect yet. So if you would weigh this now on the gains or otherwise of the strike, where would you stand?
You see, it's so interesting and amazing and disturbing that a government could do this to its own citizens. Because even realizing that this same government could even go back to pay these lecturers with the old payment system. I mean, what do you make out of this? So if you can do this, why did we allow this to happen? Why did we allow this strike to take this long a time? You see, you need to know what you can do and what you cannot achieve. This government, it's high time this government knew that lecturers, the academic staff of Nigerian universities, are not people that they can joke with. The truth is that I don't think this federal government has much of a choice in this situation. Because if you know that you don't have much of a choice in a situation, then you don't go about grandstanding. I think the federal government went about grandstanding over nothing. And it's unfortunate that they could go back to even be paying the lecturers when the federal government had said that it will evoke no work, no pay. Now the lecturers came and told you that until you pay our members, we were not going back to class. And the federal government had no choice than to do that. So what has the federal government gained? Then why must people stay at home for 9 good months before you do what you know you have to do? Now, these people are saying that they don't want IPPIS, and they gave you an alternative very, very long time before they even went on strike, which the federal government just kept somewhere, didn't do anything about. Now, these people insisted that, no, we are not going to go back to your IPPIS, we are not going to be paid through that, and the federal government still went back to use the old payments platform. So what have we achieved? For me, nothing. Now, the UTAS testing is in its last stage. I guess at the end of the day, the federal government will have to modify, look at it. If it's okay, they can take it. But the problem is this. Should the federal government adopt UTAS for ASU, then it means that the federal government will have to adopt also another payments platform for the senior staff unions in universities. It will have to adopt or adapt whatever the polytechnics bring to the table. And so how many payment platforms are you now going to be using? The federal government ought to have thought about all of this before insisting on UPPIS or IPPIS. They should have thought about it and probably had held a meeting with all the stakeholders to come, to take a decision that will be good to all. Mm-hmm. But as it is now, I think it's like we are back to square one, because I can assure you that other unions in universities and polytechnics will continue to move against the IPPIS, and I don't know where we are going from there.
Emeka, what do you think about that? Is that likely? Though you have also hinted about a possible SANU strike.
Yes, SANU, and even other unions in the colleges of education and polytechnics, because they are complaining. For instance, people who were promoted, some of them have not actually been graduated to their new pay grades. They've not been graduated to their new pay levels. So why can't this issue of, harmonizing conditions of service and pay in the civil service, why can't it be sorted out once for all? Dr. Chris Ngige, some years ago, said that government was going to look into it, that we had about more than 10 different, pay scales, in the civil service, and the government was going to look at how to harmonize it. But it was just left there. Nothing has been done about that, and we just keep going around in circles. Now, ASU has said it has suspended the strike conditionally. Now, it gave reasons for those conditions. It is not difficult for government to say, we'll take a look at these things. Implement these things, at least meet ASU halfway. Then you can negotiate some of those things. But you set timelines. The 2021 budget, for instance, has been passed. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to put ASU into it? How are you going to fix the agreement you reach with ASU into it? That means you're going to talk about a supplementary budget, or what? You see, the issue is this. We must realize that it is the future of our nation we are toying with. Look at the youths who have been kept stranded at home for over a session. You realize that at the time ASUU went on strike, some institutions must have been preparing maybe for second semester exams. Now some institutions couldn't send their graduates for NYSC and other things. You know, there are some people who maybe could have proceeded to further studies abroad or certain other things.
If I can put you on hold, let's bring in our first caller now. Ola from Lagos here. Thank you very much for joining in. Join in, please. Apologies, Ola there. We just lost connection with our first caller, but we hope that more calls can come in and Ola can reach us back. And
then I found something strange. The National Association of Nigerian Students, after they held their controversial election, the president was saying they will shut down private universities because lecturers had been sending their children there. I think law and order should not help people who align with government. Nobody should be above the law. For somebody to have made such a statement is a threat to national security. Why did he make that statement? Was it private universities that prompted ASUU to go on strike? Then you heard all kinds of things. Government trying to form a parallel, trying to encourage some people to form a parallel ASUU. You just keep grasping at straws instead of dealing with the issues. All the propaganda that lecturers have been taking pay from different places, you wouldn't allow this. And whereas you know that in the tertiary education system, certain things operate. It's not a brick and mortar situation whereby you must put a brick and join it to another brick with mortar. So that's why you must look at the peculiar situation in the tertiary education sector. And then in certain areas too where we're deficient. You also have the threat of brain drain. Lecturers leaving the system. What is going on? How are we going to build capacity in the tertiary education sector?
So that is even where I'm also going to now, building capacity, upgrading the learning modules across our federal universities, public institutions specifically. I want to quote the VC of Uni Abuja, Professor Nala, who was saying that calling for the introduction of virtual learning modes across our universities. He says even when the strike is on, even when we have strike, coming up, let students not be, cut out of the learning process. But before I take you, Yakub from Lagos is live with us now. Good evening and welcome.
Yeah, good evening to you and then good evening to your two guests in the studio. One of your guests said something that what government have been gaining in this kind of station we found ourselves. I can tell you they gained something, quote and unquote. The gain they made is that they make sure that they keep ordinary citizen children at home for 9 good months. You see, why this thing is happening is that I want to know how many of them, their children in this Nigerian tertiary institutions. None of them. They make sure that all the private schools, they send their children there, and then ordinary citizens that does not have much money sending their own children to OAU, UIA, and other schools. They make sure that they kept them back home. What are they gaining? Looter, and then the other one, they want to pay the lecturer. Lecturer say that we don't want you to pay us in this manner. This is another alternative. You agree to that. You tested it, and then for you to now say that you are not agreeing again, what kind of nonsense is that? Another thing is this. I want them to know that all those children of them, they stand outside this country to go acquire education. And then they want them to come back to this country and be governors. Those children they kept back home for 9 months. They will not allow them to do so.
All right, thank you so much.
The reason is this.
Thank you very much, Yakub, for your points. So what do you make of these suggestions?
Well, I think under a normal circumstance, it doesn't take a university vice, it shouldn't take a university vice chancellor to talk about virtual learning in the 21st century. It should be a normal thing. I mean, primary schools, all through this COVID, private primary schools run virtually, secondary schools run virtually, not necessarily expensive schools. Your normal average primary and secondary schools, they run virtually. So what is now the big deal about virtual learning? That our own public universities should still be debating and talking about it. If not that we appear to be unserious about things that matter.
And we know how the regular Android phone has become such a regular commodity for the average youth.
Exactly. And but let me shock you. We were discussing this yesterday with a dean of a postgraduate school in Nigeria. And the man just told me, he pointed at the ICT center beside his office building. And he told me that, do you know what? I don't have internet facility in this office. That is the dean of a postgraduate school in a Nigerian university. What do you make of that? If a dean does not have internet facilities, you can imagine how many internet facilities that TVC is running on. And individuals have different networks. So
there are options.
Yes, there are options. So I don't see, what is it? Is it that we want to go and innovate or invent internet? Or what is it about virtual learning that is so big deal for us in Nigeria that we are still talking like this?
All right. So, well, that said, Ola from Texas, please join in. You're most welcome, all the way from the U.S. Thank you again. Hello, Ola. Okay, well, we'll try to reconnect with Ola. All right, you're welcome. We can hear you. Carry on, we can hear you.
First of all, to congratulate my aunt for a degree. Bless you.
Thank you.
But now to the on ground. This government has no plan for masses. Yeah, could cause just now at the store. They don't have any plan. They don't want the masses children to see. It's as simple as that. And it is only God that will there when the time comes. When the time comes, we know that the masses that they refuse to pay will be a problem for them and generations. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much for your contribution, Emeka.
Well, what I have to say is that ASU should also try to change its the way it handles negotiations with government. It's not just going on strike, and all of that, but it should adopt certain measures that will make it difficult for the government to take them for granted, just like Mrs. Felicity has said. You see, keeping universities shut, not providing universities with adequate facilities, internet of all things, as simple as anything, not providing these universities with these things, and then allowing systemic disruptions in the tertiary education system will only keep us as a third world nation, while other nations are leaping into the first world. You can't joke with education. You can't joke with education. It's so unfortunate. In the past 10, 15, 20 years, we've not been able to fund education up to 26%. So why do we think that there's anything that is more important than education? Why do we think so? These children, undergraduates and postgraduates, members of the university community, are bright stars. They are stars. They have a lot of potential that can help the nation. That will be to the advantage of the nation. Right. But when you keep them at home and you don't do anything about it, what is going on? Then we must talk seriously about this virtual learning. It must be adopted. You see, the reality of COVID-19 has shown us that you cannot continue to keep people, large numbers of people in the same place. Right. So we must think about it. We must deepen discussion and action around it.
Okay, we'll end this discussion on this note now and take a breather. More on Journalist Hangout Please stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us on this news. Of course, more on Journalists Hangout now, and the discussion is about the global community racing towards curbing further spread of the coronavirus pandemic. And Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, is struggling to halt the second wave. In Abuja, the country's capital and one of the hotbeds of the pandemic, the COVID-19 Enforcement Task Force has now begun enforcement of safety protocols in strategic places. For the Federal Capital Territory Administration, the time for everyone to comply with safety measures is now, and that is also reverberating across the country. Joining us now, BKO is here with us on this desk to continue conversations, or to begin conversations with Madam Olabisi and Mr. Emeka. Welcome, sir.
It's good to be here.
Indeed. I can imagine. So, BK, what are your thoughts on this, the race, to ensure that we don't suffer any more fatalities and to ensure that, COVID-19 is curbed?
Well, there's a lot that we need to do. And if the countries of the world are taking some really tough decisions, we should also be ready to take such tough decisions, or try to at least localize some of the strategies in a way that will conform with the realities on ground in our country. For example, Saudi Arabia has imposed a flight ban. That's an example of a country desperate to ensure that COVID-19 does not kill their people. And some countries of the world, including Germany, Australia, they've already banned flights from the UK and South Africa, where the new strain of the virus, which is especially dangerous in terms of the speed with which it kills people, is already running riot currently. So I don't think we should waste time. We should identify countries where that new strain is causing so many problems now and stop them from coming into our country, stop flights from those countries. It's just the best thing to do. Air travel still remains one of the greatest means by which this disease is spread, or this virus is spread. I just got back from Abuja, and we were waiting to collect our bags, and a crowd milled around the luggage carousel, an unusually large one. So I was telling myself that what's going on? If you see the pictures, you see clearly that no observance of physical distancing at all, because the crowd is like 3 airplanes landed about the same time, and everyone just wanted to pick up his carry-on bag.
Luggage.
We were just too many. It was a particularly large number of people in that small hall at the old domestic terminal.
No.
So we need to take strong measures. For the Nigerians who still deceive themselves that this thing is not, doesn't exist, and encouraged by a governor who has chosen to go against science, the real sense of the word. The question to ask themselves is, the question to ask all people is, if you do not believe that it exists in Nigeria, are you also going to say that in America, where it has killed so many people, in the UK, where it has killed not less than 68,000 people, are you also going to say that it does not exist there? So if we think that, okay, what we have is audio coronavirus in Nigeria, how about those countries? So for me, I'm not surprised that the FCT administration is taking some big steps, because the FCT has suddenly become some form of epicenter for this new wave. You know, some really worrisome numbers coming from the FCT. So the administration has to enforce the use of face masks. In the UK, they've begun arresting people who fail to use the face mask. We need to do that in Nigeria as well.
I was even tempted at a point, walking down the street here, somewhere in Lagos here, happy to see so many people still walking around popular bus stops, you know, without face masks. And the government has said this non-compliance with this and other non-medical measures, as well as frequent travel, frequent resumption of activities, business and otherwise, all contributed to what we are getting now, more cases. As at yesterday, 999 new cases were reported last night. And, you know, of course, like BKO has said, but then I'm also quite disappointed, you know, by what the picture BKO just painted about how our terminal, you know, is standing now. Large crowds still milling around. It's also talking about, you know, capacity of government to walk the talk. Or what do you make of this? Amen.
Yeah, of course. The unfortunate thing is that we aim and then we relax. We shoot and then we relax. And it's a very unfortunate aspect of our public policy. NCDC, you know, has been saying that we should not relax. We should not rest on our laurels. We should not, you know, let down our guard. We should make sure we continue with the enforcement of these protocols for the time being, because you still have a lot of people coming in from abroad, from different countries into Nigeria, Nigerians traveling from here abroad. You still have infections going about. So we cannot relax these things. But you see, you go to public events with your mask, you look like an odd man out. People will be staring at you as if something, I mean, you've gone nuts.
Where is this one from?
You know? People believe that there's nothing like that. But you see, we cannot joke with the reality of the situation. That it has not been as severe, it has not been so severe in Nigeria as it has been in other countries. Doesn't mean that there can be a sudden spike in cases. And now they're talking about a new strain, you know, certain new strains. I just hope we don't get a tropical strain that will now match whatever it is that is,
our climate.
You know, match our climate, and then right on the midst of our climate to inflict more damage. I just hope so, because the situation is scary, and I think government should join other countries in cutting off, in suspending air links with the United Kingdom and other countries where this new strain has been reported. Otherwise, we could just find that we have a serious fire on our hands that just started as a small fire and has become a huge blaze.
But talking about this banning of, you know, specific flights from certain countries, the UK, for example, where we know
South Africa, Wales,
is battling with that particular new strain. Scientists have also talked about, you know, the existence of that particular strain here in Nigeria.
How did it come in?
Indeed. But obviously, can you understand the government's reason for not heeding to the advice of not just, you know, regular Nigerians, but, you know, experts? You know, I've also said we need to take a drastic measure on the air sector once again, but perhaps because of the economic dimensions to all of this and, you know, all the realities in our own climes here. What do you make of this calls?
I think government is just following a pattern. And that pattern is a pattern of, you know, not acting at the appropriate time. You act so late, and at the end of the day, things will have gotten out of hand. Remember that even this COVID, when it first started, here we discussed the issue, and we called on government to close, you know, the airspace, stop airlines from coming in. But for some reasons, which we later learned to be that some of them were abroad and they wanted to come back home. somehow they delayed in acting until some people brought the virus home and it began to torment Nigerians, and here we are. We have just been very, very fortunate that somehow we've been helped. I don't know how, but I tell you what we are seeing in Nigeria is it's not because we've been efficient in managing the situation, but somehow things just work for us. But then we shouldn't take things for granted. We should not, because this is a virus that has also been around us for some time now. Whether we want to believe it or not, it's also adapting. So you don't know the time that there will be a spike. So the more reason why everyone should be very careful. But then there is a difference between making a statement and walking the talk, just like you mentioned the other time. In Abuja, I learned that people are still going about their things like nothing is happening. Someone told me on my way here today that she was at immigration office yesterday to renew her passport, and none of the immigration officers was wearing masks. Not to now talk of the people that came in. Yeah. Now he just told us what he witnessed at the airports. Now, who controls the airports? So before you can tell your citizens to actually obey some things, you must lead by example, which I think the federal government should do. But then Nigerians too should not wait for governments, because it is not government that is going to die. You understand? So all these pushing blames to government, people should also use their sense.
Be responsible.
They should be responsible. And we've been hammering these things. Lagos State, for instance, has been hammering on these things on social media, radio, jingles, everywhere, talking about it. So the citizens also have a responsibility, and they should also know that this is about your health. It's about your life. And for crying out loud, I have not seen anybody that died and resurrected. Once the life is gone, is gone.
So that said about, face mask, the government's rule now. But BKO, what are your thoughts on our test capacity? We have carried out about 903,800 tests, as at the latest count on the NCDC website. And NCDC is also saying that all the states have been armed with at least one testing lab, and it's urging Nigerians, to come forward and, present themselves for testing. But how have we fared from your assessment?
We have not done enough. We should be able to test at least 5% of our people. When we are able to test 5% of our people, we can say we've gone a bit far. For now, we are far away from achieving that, and it's down to all kinds of factors. Before now, we could do this test in just about 6 places. We didn't prepare for a day like this. But during this crisis, government has increased testing capacity, and you can now actually do your test in many states where it was previously not possible to do those tests. For example, for the South-South, it was in Edo State. Everyone was going to Edo State to do the test. In the Northeast, people will go to Maiduguri to do the test. The way it is now, we have a lot more. For example, in Cross River, they previously did not have a testing capacity, but right now, in the tertiary, one of the tertiary medical institutions there, you can now do the test. So for states were taking samples and traveling, getting their staff to travel to deliver those samples in the states where we had the testing capacity. That in itself allowed for tampering with samples, and in some cases samples were not delivered. But now they've made it easier. They brought it closer to states that did not have the capacity. And some states that did not have the capacity now have it. I know that we now have, at least at the last count, last time I read about it, at least 12 states. But I know that we now have more than that. So this will help us to be able to know how we are doing. But you must test a certain percentage of your population to determine how well you are doing, or how many people, to establish a trend, whether you are facing rising cases. Look at Kaduna, for example. Kaduna has discovered that they are in a kind of emergency situation because from samples submitted, they now record between 30 to 35% cases. I mean, 30 of positive. I mean, positive cases
nationwide.
In the state.
Indeed.
For
in
example,
Kaduna State, yes, it's been described as one of the hotbeds.
If they submitted 300 samples, 35% of the 300
come from
will test positive. So that sent a clear signal to the state government that, look, we need to do something. Because even during the apogee of the crisis, around March, April, and May, they were not even recording that high percentage of people who test positive amongst the samples that they were submitting. So that was why the government decided to move quickly, decided to shut down schools, and took some other measures like the closure of bars and even restaurants, so that any place that they are not sure that up to 50 persons or that less than 50 persons will not be at a particular time, such places have to be shut. So, which is a way of addressing the issue of crowds. Once people are going to be more than 50 at any given venue, then that venue has to be shut down. So whether it's a casino or a nightclub or a drinking den or even a club.
All right. But let's also talk about the vaccination drive of the country. When PTF presented its report to the president earlier this week, we also saw President Buhari talking on it and directing his people, so to speak, the PTF members now to work on this. What are your thoughts on this vaccination drive now that will possibly, beat the spread? And Nigeria has also, bought this international drive, so to speak. So what are your thoughts, Emeka?
For me, you find public officials who say they've been tested 3, 4, 5 times. And there's so many Nigerians who have not been tested. I think that should be our focus, not just bringing in vaccines and administering to the people. We should also find a way to control the spread of this virus, not just about giving people vaccines, because a senior medical practitioner was telling me that vaccines are not just they are not really advisable in all circumstances. You find that vaccines could have a 50-50 chance. They could actually spike certain conditions, pre-existing conditions that were just there, lying quietly. They could trigger them. So we should do more. I feel, that we're talking about vaccination, we should do more of testing. Okay. Then we should increase the protocols, safety, hygiene. Let's have a clean environment.
To interrupt you there and allow BC to spare some seconds before we move on, because time is not on our side.
Yeah, I think even for the vaccination, we are not likely to even get it before 2022 or later in 2021. You should also know that the people producing this vaccine, they will first of all satisfy their citizens' needs before the thing gets to us. So it's better for us to start talking about it, really, because it could take time for it to get to us. But then I don't see us getting the vaccines before close to probably 2023. So whatever we can do to preserve our lives before the vaccines come.
Beyond
a
vaccination.
Yeah.
Well, that said, we'll rest the conversation for now. There will definitely be another opportunity to discuss this issue further. And as this time now is just to let our viewers on our sister channel, TVC, know that we cannot continue transmission there. But, of course, the program continues on TVC News. And for our European viewers, they can still watch us via the Biscay B. And, of course, you can also tune in online. That said, let's move on now to yet another issue. Nigeria has left its land borders unattended for long. And now they have become a free-for-all for everyone, so to speak. The country's borders have become so porous that President Muhammadu Buhari is left helpless. Speaking in Abuja, President Buhari says only God can effectively supervise the 1,400-kilometer border between Nigeria and the Republic of Niger. Because that statement sparked, so many reactions, diverse reactions, many saying that this is just, another, testament that the government is left helpless indeed.
I like President Buhari for one thing. He doesn't believe in saying things simply to please people. Generally, he likes to say the truth. Generally, he likes to speak his mind. He said some time ago that he never knew that the problems of this country were this great at the time that he was seeking election as a civilian president. He said it. He said he wished that he was younger at the time that he got elected. That's to tell you that the man had seen how gargantuan our problems are. To expect him to simply speak in a manner that will simply make people happy is not his style. It's not his style. I remember when the president made some appointments early into his administration, very early, the first set of appointments that he made, and people complained, why did all of those, nearly all of those people come from northern Nigeria? And of course, the people who have taken it upon themselves, unsolicited, to defend the president, to help him to explain certain issues, they said, no, the president went for merit. The president picked those people on merit. And the president did an interview where I said, no, I did not go for merit. The first set of appointments, they were my personal staff. They were people that I had known for years. Indeed. I chose those people that I had known, that I trusted for years, which eventually became tomatoes on the faces of those who are defending him, that he was more concerned about merit. Because the question to ask is, are they saying, because some of these people sometimes don't even think before they talk, are they saying that it's only from a section of Nigeria that you have people who have merit, who qualify for certain positions? The president clarified that, look, I chose, because they are going to be my personal staff, I chose the people that I have been used to, that familiarized myself with for years. He spoke honestly there, and I respect him for that. It's the people who will want to support him blindly that I do not respect. I have no regard absolutely for them, because they are doing a job the man didn't send them to do. Now, on this matter, the president knows that it's a big problem. He is not going to promise and fail on this matter. He knows that to solve that problem, you cannot find a quick fix solution to that problem. Because even the Americans who employ technology, they still find it difficult to police their extensive borders, especially with countries like Mexico. You will find Cubans even swimming for hours to cross into America. It's a problem. Border control is a problem. How much more our own, where it's been established that we have more than 1,400 illegal routes. When the president promises you, I'm going to solve that problem, he knows that given the number of years that he has, that's not a problem that he can solve. And there's no government that can solve all problems. You try your best, another government will come and continue. As well as Fashola worked in Lagos, he didn't solve all the problems. That's a fact. President Buhari is not going to solve all the problems. And when he spoke like that, he merely amplified the fact that this is a big problem for which he would want a solution, even if that solution will come from God. It's a way of saying that, look, this is a big problem. But he didn't want to promise Nigerians that, look, we are going to solve this problem, because if he simply said, look, we are going to solve that problem, yes, it may make people happy. But at the end of the day,
the people will still be watching.
They will say, they will now challenge that. They do not say you are going to do this. So that is the way I see what he has done.
Okay.
So to simply be ridiculing him and be saying that was it God that we voted for, well, I mean, is out of the question.
So he's saying
those borders
can be
those borders, the way they are now, the fact that there are so many illegal entry points, into unconventional entry points into our country, it should make us realize that, look, this problem is big and everyone needs to play his part. Okay. It's not the president alone. Okay. It's not Nigeria, even Niger Republic has to play its part. The governors of those states, those 6 states where we share border with Niger Republic, Yobe, Jigawa, Sokoto, Katsina, Borno, you know, they all have to do something.
Okay, and that border, that Nigeria-Niger border has, been so porous, talking about the influx of, Boko Haram terrorists, bandits as well. But then another way to describe what the president has said about that area that also looks at his belief in the security chiefs that he still holds on to in his administration. How do you look at that area?
Well, that's one big puzzle that Nigerians are waiting for President Buhari to unravel. I mean, why is he keeping those service chiefs in office? All kinds of excuses have been adduced, as to why those service chiefs are in office. But we see how it's affecting, career progression in the armed forces. But that's by the way. But the issue is this. President Buhari is not someone who is really known to make to try to be politically correct. He's one kind of man that can throw you under the bus when you least expect it, because he will speak from his mind. He is not, I don't think his aides actually have time to, coach him. Oh, you're Mr. President, if you ask this, you will go this way, you will go this way, you will go this way. So managing such a person can be difficult. So the best thing is this, is to look at within what he said, what are the pros and the cons? For him to say it's God, now that has given you a true picture that there is indeed a complex problem. That is one. Secondly, that we don't have the capacity right now to manage the problem, overcome it, or even try to get around it. We don't have the capacity. And then the last thing is that, okay, we will try our best, but we just hope that certain factors, certain variables will just come into place to make things work out. So in saying God, I think maybe in a sense, it's metaphorical, that this is something that is not just
a big problem
about, marshalling soldiers and just setting them 1, 2, 3, 4 along the border. No. There are dimensions to these porous borders that we need to look at. And then, like we've seen with the Boko Haram, we brought in, we had the multinational national joint task force.
Mercenaries.
We've had mercenaries. We've had vigilantes, the hunters, and all of that. Now, where do we go from here? Like DK has said, the citizens also have to play their role. Then you have the activities, destructive activities of smugglers, of the big-time smugglers, who are engaged in human trafficking. They smuggle vehicles, they smuggle rice, they smuggle drugs, they smuggle arms. Those guys are very powerful. They run powerful cartels that are very, very influential. So that is one other problem. Then again, how are the countries around us, how are they taking the issue of border control? Are they really serious about it? You look at Niger and northern Nigeria, you know, the far north. There is this affinity between Niger and the far north. So, in handling the border area, there you also have to look at the cultural and historical aspects of the issue. I mean, people expect they can just walk across the border to see their brothers, you know, their kith and kin, and so there shouldn't be restrictions. So, it means then that the National Assembly, I'll advise the National Assembly, should hold a public hearing on this issue so that it can get information, it can get expert opinion from different sectors, different stakeholders, people who have been involved in border control. It can even invite diplomats to come and tell us how their countries have been able to handle things like this, so that, you know, a country, for instance, like Egypt, had such a similar problem, you know, people trying to cross through deserts and tunnels and all of that. We can invite the international community, you know, NGOs, and, you know, experts to discuss at a public hearing. It should not just be taken in the usual Nigerian fashion. No, what does it mean? You know, why will the president speak like this?
You know, before the former NSA, the late former NSA, Azazi was my friend, and I visited him when he was NSA. And he was telling me that at that time, Boko Haram had just assumed a worrisome level of notoriety. So he said that one of the things that they wanted to do was to build a wall, you know, around the country to protect our borders. But the bill was extremely high. So they came to the conclusion that, look, we cannot do this. He then talked about an equipment, more or less, it's built like a balloon. Mm-hmm. They even used it during the Olympics. Yeah. You see, monitoring the area. He said that balloon, that they could use that equipment. I don't know what it's called now. You know, just like it's like a projectile in terms of the design, but it's fairly big. You know, that they could use it to monitor the border, the border with Niger Republic, Chad, you know, and Cameroon. With Chad, we really do not have that much problem because our border with them is not extensive. It's just around the Lake Chad area. With Cameroon too, we do not have the kind of problem that we have with Niger. If you look at Niger, Niger is just like a semi-failed state. Many parts of Niger are really not
in addition to poverty, and
then in our own country too, many Borno State, Borno North is largely ungoverned. People are not even there. You go to Yobe, the Gaydam area, you see Nigerians and non-Nigerians just streaming in and out. To inside Niger, they come back. And it is those areas, Boko Haram continues to attack those areas. Gaydam, Babangida, all of those areas along the border with Niger Republic. Boko Haram is active in those areas because they can actually leave our country, go and hibernate inside Niger Republic and come out when they like. You know, Boko Haram is active in Niger Republic. They are still very active in Niger Republic. So the fact that we can't police those borders, we have played into the hands of the enemy. And I really don't see a quick fix to the problem. The president has explained it the way it is.
Just so quickly,
let me hear from Olabisi, because beyond what has been said, taking it further rather from what have been said. What is your recipe to this lingering security challenges we have in Nigeria?
Well, I have a
around our borders.
I have a different opinion about the president's statement. First of all, leaving things to God. First of all, not all Nigerians even believe in God, to start with. So, if you talk about God on security matters, some people might just be it might just evoke fear in them because they elected a president who is a human being, who is supposed to be the commander-in-chief, and who is supposed to also inspire you know, them and let them know that he's in charge. So coming to say that it's God that will do it, no matter how enormous that problem is, some people could be afraid and just think that, oh, so it has gotten to this level. So as truthful and sincere the president could be, it could also be, you know, putting fear in some people. Now, going beyond that, looking at the real problem and the solution, I'm just wondering that if we know that the problem is this big, that Boko Haram insurgents use Niger Republic and the bandits, they use that. So it means we have already identified the problem. So we should be thinking about the solution. And things that Babajide mentioned, that late General Azazi said, I think there are things we should be thinking about. How can we, you know, use technology to actually curb all of these illegal migrants into our country? Then we also need to, I guess one of the problems we have in Niger especially is the fact that you may not be able to differentiate between Nigerians and Nigerians. I guess there must have been a lot of intermarriages and things like that, that when you do anything against Nigerian, it's as if you are doing it against a Nigerian.
I think people know them.
So now, but we are talking about...
the Fulani from Niger, for example, is when you see them, they are different.
They are different.
Even the governor of Katsina the other day was saying that these bandits come from outside of Nigeria. And I've always made that point clear that, look, these guys are not Nigerians.
So even whatever we are even
but they are using the ECOWAS protocol of free movement of goods and services.
So we are dealing with illegal people. So whatever punishments or whatever can be done to illegal migrants, then I think we have to evoke it going forward and also use technology to police our borders. We should do what we can do and allow God to now do the rest for us, for those of us that believe in God.
Yeah, I just want to add something. Nigeria needs to discuss extensively with France and the United States. The United States has a drone base in Niger. So we're talking about technology. The US has really tried a lot. The European Union has also done so much in the area of helping Niger to improve. But of course, it's almost a failed state. Then France, you know, was a colonial master of Niger. And again, you see, we are unfortunately in a dangerous competition with France. Look at the railway we're trying to build. France is building a railway from Niamey to Lomé. We're building a railway to, you know, to somewhere in Niger Republic. So there has been that kind of dangerous competition with France. But we need to now do something about it. We need to sit down with France and the United States to work out solutions. Yes, we work out solutions, not just leave it to God. There are workable solutions.
They kidnapped him in Niger and brought him into Nigeria.
Yes.
Into Nigeria, yes.
Gentlemen, in a related developments, you know, still talking, you know, security, how we can make Nigeria, you know, safer for Nigerians and others. More questions are still being asked about the abduction and subsequent release of more than 300 schoolboys of the government science secondary school, Kankara in Katsina State, this on the 11th of December. And while parents and guardians of the schoolboys are still thanking their stars for their safe return, many are concerned about the manner of the rescue. The presidency is saying now that some repentant bandits helped governments to secure the release of the Kankara boys. BK, what do you make of this? The presidency is still insisting that this northwest region now is still out of bounds, so to speak, now to the Boko Haram terrorists who had initially claimed responsibility for the kidnap.
No, well, it's important sometimes for people to help calm us down. But we need to be able to read between the lines and not allow people to simply deceive us. The IG has said that terrorists are operating in the northwest. He mentioned Ansaru, a faction of Boko Haram, that Ansaru has bases, cells in the northwest and parts of north central. Remember, Ansaru even ambushed Nigerian soldiers around Lokoja.
Yeah.
The time passed. If Boko Haram had operated in Abuja, in Suleja, and all of these places in the past, no one should give us the impression that they cannot operate beyond the northeast. In the case of this last abduction, clearly, Shekau contacted a leader of the bandits group to arrange that abduction for him. And that was why even that boy, the boy who led the, who spoke on behalf of others, said they were telling him to mention the Boko Haram Shekau faction because they were recording that video for Shekau to use for his propaganda purpose. It was Shekau that released the video of that children. Nobody else had access to that video, meaning that up until that time, they were doing his bidding. They wanted to do what he wanted. They kidnapped for him. But there were 3 bandit groups involved, 3 bandit leaders. So what happened was, immediately this thing happened, the federal government, and I was told that the VP actually called the governor of Zamfara State, knowing that he had engaged with bandits in the past and he had a kind of amnesty, or what's it called, for them. They called him to help them to intervene because security agencies had located the whereabouts of those kids and they were inside the forest in Zamfara. So they told the governor to intervene. For 3 days, the governor of Zamfara was engaging those bandits, using the retired bandits that he was already familiar with, the people that he had done business with
in the past.
So then he was the one who pleaded that Nigerian army should not take military action against those guys. He said they should wait until they finish negotiations before any move against those guys, because it will jeopardize his efforts. So he appealed, and they didn't take any action. They knew where they are, and the our war planes were cycling over the area. The bandits also knew that, look, these guys were monitoring them. Now, once negotiation was over, the bandits released the boys to the Zamfara State Commissioner for Internal Security and the SSG of the state. That was what happened. And then the boys were handed over to the GOC of 8th Division, General Bande, who used to be the commander of 17th Division in Katsina before that time. So this is how this whole thing happened. So if they say that bandits were engaged, perfect. And it wasn't the federal government that engaged the bandits. It was the governor of Zamfara State. And that's what Garba Shehu said, that because he had engaged them in the past, we reached out to him to help. And that's what he has done. Good thing, our soldiers, they positioned themselves in an area where it was impossible for those guys to take those boys away, because Shekau was promising them that he would send vehicles. And what Shekau wanted to do was to move those children to another person that he was more comfortable with. But the negotiations effectively shut him out. And we were able to bring those children home safely.
Bring back our boys.
Yeah, so, which is what gives us joy.
Indeed.
All of these attempts, this one wants to take credit, that one wants to take credit, is the Nigerian way. But the truth is always the truth. This is what happened. And to now even be labeling the man a supporter of terrorists after he helped, Somebody issued a statement. It's very unfair. Yes, it's very unfair for someone who helped.
Indeed, and the larger picture is that the boys are here, not one, not two. That number.
Yes, and nobody was injured. Right. But if we had used military.
Many would have been killed. There was that hesitance now that collateral damage, using those boys as bait now. But Emeka, what are your thoughts? We still have a number of captives now in the terrorist den, and even with the bandits. But what are your thoughts now on this seeming revelation?
Yeah, you see, kidnapping has become a major problem in Nigeria. You heard about, was it yesterday or so, an entire bus was kidnapped on Benin Auchi Road, and the police said they were not aware. Kidnapping left and right. I mean, human beings have now become, unfortunately, commodities, merchandise. You can just pick somebody. I've had cases of even the ordeal, kidnapped victims. Listen to kidnapped victims, the ordeal they went through.
Made them walk
and you just imagine that people can be so mean to kidnap people and trade them, get money, and all of that. Listen. We must look at also the role of security agencies in this kidnapping episodes. Because criminals cannot just be moving about freely without colluding with rogue security agents. We're making a mockery of our country. Yes, it's so slow. How could that large number of boys have been moved? They were not even kept near the school. They were moved far away.
Yes.
Now, people, I had said it, as at 2016, that we should have a mechanism whereby we can also reach out to these terrorists and all of that to find a way of de-escalating the threats and finally overcoming it. But people said, no, take military action, bomb them, kill them, this, that, the other.
But all efforts in the past to placate them have failed.
Okay. Yeah, but we have to continue.
Right. Okay.
We must continue.
So intensify this
then again, we must also de-radicalize, continue with the de-radicalization program. We must continue with, finding a way of getting many of them out of this thing. But kidnapping should be moved to the level of terrorism. Right. So, it's a big problem.
Repentant bandits, repentant terrorists, how does this all sound to you?
It sounds as if it's an official endorsement of these actions. That's the way I look at it. Look,
but there are gains.
Looking at the gains. But you see, let me tell you something. This particular issue, you cannot tell me that over 300 children were kidnapped. Thank God for whichever way they were able to be brought back. And no single person.
Nobody was arrested.
Nobody was arrested, and nobody is being held accountable. No matter the method we use, that area makes it as if it is an official.
Because they will do it again.
Because they will come back again.
They did it some days later.
They will do it again. That is the problem. Yes, they will do it again. So that is my own worry about it.
Right. Yeah. Many thanks to all of you, great discussants here on the program today, Olabisi, Emeka, and BKO. I appreciate all the contributions on the program. We have to end the show. There are more insights, more great insights, from this table that will be dished out to our dear viewers on, divergent topics right here on Journalist Hangout. So I thank you all again.
Thank you.
And that's Journalist Hangout today. Remember